Joining us now, Senator Bryce Reeves. Senator, good to have you. Happy New Year. Merry Christmas.
Well, happy anniversary for you guys. Making it 6 years is an accomplishment in radio, I think.
You know, it really is. And I tell everybody, we discovered early on that we're in the longevity game. The longer you're at it, the better chance you have of being successful. By the way, they teach at Harvard Business School, I understand. I never went there. I went to Fairleigh Dickinson where I played baseball. So I didn't go to Harvard, but I understand if a small business makes it through year number 5, they have a high propensity for eventual success. So we made it through that. We're happy about that. Now, Senator, you've shaken up this race, no doubt. Tell us the story here of what went down with these emails and from your perspective, what happened.
So I don't know that I've shaken up this race, but some people have. We've just exposed the truth. I mean, quite frankly, back in September, there was an email blast that went out to a number of folks claiming that I was having an adulterous affair with someone on my campaign staff, and that as a Christian, and I think that's important to note, that, you know, how could I be doing this? And it went to some very important people in my life that hold me accountable as a Christian, and I started getting these things back. And my goal, that email was signed by a lady named Martha McDaniel. And I had a belly full of it. I had to, as you can imagine, go to my wife, explain to my kids all these things that go along with an accusation as such. And John, we've talked before. I'm a former narcotics detective. I've worked a lot of cases, and I'm also an Army Ranger, so I'm not going to take some things lying down. And for me, this breaches the realm of ethics in politics. And when they sent that email to just try to destroy my 26-year marriage and my family and the reputations of those who work for me, they had crossed the Rubicon. And so I decided I would, under the radar, I didn't tell but a very small group of people that are advising me. I had my attorney file a lawsuit against Martha McDaniel. When we got the information back, it was true that Martha was a non-entity. So the only information we had was the email that was sent from an email address that says staffordforfreedom@gmail.com. So we sent a formal subpoena to Google. In that legal process, Google's folks sent back proprietary and confidential information that verified that the IP addresses that the emails were sent from. It also showed us what's called metadata in a technical sense, what the cell phone number was that was utilized through Google's security process to actually set the account up. That number came back to a Mr. Alex Vogel, the husband of Jill Vogel. We subpoenaed the 2 separate internet providers that provide this service. One of those companies, Viasat, notified us that they were going to notify their client, the Vogels, of the lawsuit of Reeves versus McDaniel. The original notice went out on December 1st. We were notified that somehow that got screwed up on December 22nd. Vogels were, and we were getting notification that they would be notified overnight mail, UPS, that there was this impending lawsuit, Reeves versus McDaniel, and that their IP address was part of that suit. We know as a fact in the matter of record that the Vogels had an attorney go look to see what was in that lawsuit. The reality is the information that we got, the digital forensic evidence came back to my attorney's office, which was not in those case jackets at the courthouse. So, with that information, we reached out to the Vogel campaign through a third-party person, a senior member of our caucus, in good faith, to try to resolve this issue with the Vogel, so this didn't come out. That happened. It didn't go well, and thus the story broke through the Washington Post, and the rest is kind of coming out. And so that's the facts of the case. My opponents claiming that they were hacked, probabilities of that are slim to none, but I'll play along, and because ultimately, John, my goal is to find out who did this to me and my family. And we've asked the Vogel camp to allow a third party to have access to those records, mutually agree upon, and we'll pay for it to prove their innocence as well, because the last thing I want to do is cast aspersions on people that didn't do it. And so if it wasn't them, which the evidence as a former cop is overwhelmingly pointing to them, what would a reasonable, prudent person believe? We've heard this before. And so if not them, then who was it? And why aren't they working with us to help figure this out? And so that's where we are right now.
All right. So, Senator, I appreciate that clear and concise synopsis of, in your view, what went down. A couple of questions I have, if I may, and then we can kind of go on with a general discussion of this. Obviously, there were 2 IP addresses. Both of them were on the property of the Vogel's home. Now, there's a question of whether they were living there at the time, but also the neighbors. These were not password protected. So basically, I could have driven up to the edge of either of the driveways, right? I could have driven up there, got my iPhone, did the search for an internet provider, found them, hit the button, and I'm in, right? That would be my IP address, because it was not password protected, because they live out in the country and it's a satellite.
So who's saying it's not password? First, I would say this, John. Who doesn't have their Wi-Fi password protected? And secondly, just because someone says it so doesn't mean it's so. Show me it wasn't password protected. Show me the proof it wasn't password protected. You're telling me it wasn't, but you haven't shown me the evidence that it wasn't password protected. Okay, so let's buy that argument. I'll buy that argument. I'll bite. Okay, I'll bite. It's a cop. I'll bite and say that's your defense. Now I want you to prove to me how somebody physically got Alex Vogel's personal cell phone when the SMS text, which was sent by Google as part of their security procedures, and verified the account. All at the same time while sitting in a driveway. And certainly, should this thing proceed in a legal case or even a potential criminal case at this point, because there's been some laws that have been broken here, that evidence of who was where and when and how, all that can be determined, because we all know what our phones track and don't track, and airline ticket, all that stuff through a discovery process can be found out. And so even if I bite on that one, how do you prove the other one, right? It's unrefutable. And so I get it. I didn't want to go here. I'm following the evidence. What I want to know is the truth. What is the truth? We know Martha McDaniels doesn't exist.
Right.
So what's the truth? The truth is probably as simple as it is that's out there. And that's where we are.
Okay, so number one, you're saying, and by the way, I said this in my piece. Let me just read you that so everybody kind of knows where I am. I said that, bottom line, Reeves is a former Army Ranger and a one-time narcotics detective. I don't know about you, but I never mess around with former narc detectives. It's just a bad idea. Whoever did this didn't know your background, I can tell you that, because just was astonishing to me that obviously this was done by someone, right? We don't know who right now. You think you know who, but it's not proven, so it's alleged. But I don't know why anybody would mess around with this with somebody like yourself with the background that you have. It would be the last thing I would ever do. So that's just a sidebar. Let's get to the mobile phone, which is the smoking gun in my mind in this thing. So you're saying that the IP addresses, they have to prove that these were password unprotected, all right? Assuming they do that, then you get to the cell phone verification. And according to the documents that you sent me, the Google documentation shows the number where the SMS code went was a phone registered to Alex Vogel. Is that my understanding? Who's the husband of Senator Vogel? Is that my understanding?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And if you, for the listeners out there that want to see some of the hard evidence, the Bull Elephant blog, we released some of that information, the actual documents to them, as well as a voice recording of, digital voice recording of that cell phone number that was utilized. And a lot of it's there. So go to the Bull Elephant, and the evidence is there. And the preponderance of the evidence clearly points to the Vogels at this point. And what I'm saying is okay, if it's not you, then who is it, and what are you doing to fix that and find that out? And what I'm saying is, give us your hard drive, give us Alex's phones, let's get them to a third-party person, and let's get to the bottom of this. Because the reality is, all this stuff, the evidence is clearly there to show they've done it. They're claiming I was hacked. Well, who did something like this? Was it the Russians? I doubt so. So, I mean, we're not talking President of the United States. We're talking someone who maliciously went in there to try to tear me apart and tear my family apart. And I'm not a person who's a crime victim, but I'm certainly not going to lay down and let people do this. And I think, by and large, John, the American people are done with politics like this, and there's no place for this in the Republican Party. If you're going to do this sort of stuff, somebody mentioned earlier, in a primary situation, and it was Republican leaning that we should say this for the Democrats. Well, I revised that to tell them, hey, look, there's no place for this in politics anymore, period. If we can't have a substantial debate about the issues and where we are, then we've got a real problem. And for someone like me, it's almost like tearing down a house. You can tear off shingles and siding, but you want to rip a house down, you go in and you take out main structural supports. And my structural support is my family and my Christian faith. And I'm not going to have those breached by anyone.
Okay, so let's get back to the mobile phone. The Google documentation listing a recovery number, but it didn't mention its verification status. So how do you know that? I mean, how can you prove that indeed that was Alex's phone when they didn't mention its verification status?
We can show that through the evidence that we have, John. And you have to understand, there's certain pieces of this case that we're not going to release because there's still legal remedies at course. We have a pathway forward, not to mention what we've been told could be possible criminal charges. There's still a civil pathway that's going forward here. There's probably a bar complaint that's going to be filed in this whole thing. Because the preponderance of the evidence that we have, and we still have some of that stuff that's not being released due to the nature of this being not just a political battle at this point, but a legal battle.
When you or somebody on your staff called the phone number in question, the mobile phone that it was sent to, you said you got a voicemail message. Can you tell our audience what that was?
It just verified that you've reached the voicemail of Alex Vogel, and it wasn't a member of my staff. It was a person who is an expert in the field that does this stuff. In fact, she works on, some people have probably heard, How to Catch a Predator. She's part of that team, so they know what they're doing, and they're the ones that pulled that down for us and got that secured. So it's clearly Alex Vogel's voice on that voice message. My understanding has since been taken down, but we've captured that data, the date, the time, the timestamp, the phone number has come from, everything else. And certainly voice analysis will clearly show that as well. So that's that number. Trust me.
So the email that I read that you supplied in your documentation that was sent by the fictitious Martha McDaniel started out by saying there is a rumor circulating or a rumor going around that, and then mentioned something going on in your personal life, but it didn't say this is a fact. So I'm not a lawyer, but when I tried to ask a few people if that was grounds for a defamation suit, the two people I said, well, not really, because it's just repeating a innuendo rather than saying a fact. Is there any basis to that?
Well, it sounds like you ought to get a different attorney, because the attorneys that I talk to certainly know that there's a compelling case here. And, we certainly read that a whole lot different. And it certainly is slanderous when they say, repeatedly about the fact Senator Reeves is carrying an open and obvious adulterous relationship with his campaign staffer and constant companion. And it's risen, it goes in and it's accusatory in tone, and it's actually throwing a charge to the person who received it to take action against me for that. And so, we think there's enough standing. We're willing to put some legal stuff behind it, as well as, like I mentioned before, there's potential criminal charges coming with this.
Now, sources I talked to, Senator Bryce Reeves, close to Vogel, said that there was another intermediary in the caucus and that you had extended an offer to them that if she resigned from the race, if she withdraw from the race, Senator Vogel gets out of the race, and that also that she made an apology to your family about what went on and condemned the email, that you would have not gone public with this. Is that true?
I can't speak to that, the exact conversation, because I wasn't part of that, and I don't have a transcript of that. I only have what would be deemed as hearsay in a court of law from the individual that went and spoke with them. And when originally confronted with the accusations, the Vogel camp, in what was supposed to be a very civil, under the radar conversation, was my understanding with this person. And then all of a sudden there was a fourth person on that conversation who happened to be Jill Vogel's attorney. Once this individual found out that Jill Vogel had an attorney on the phone, that conversation had to change. So I have no idea how the conversation changed, or what the outcome, or what was actually said in that dialogue. But it begs the question, if you didn't do it, why do you need an attorney on the phone? And if somebody's coming to you in good faith, again, why do you need an attorney to work out something between two colleagues? So we took that as a negative front and moved forward accordingly. So, it's going to work itself in the wash, and we're going to stand with the truth. And that's kind of where we are. And it's, for me, it's as a Christian, there are a lot of different passages out there, but for me, Proverbs 10:9 says it all, and it means that it says, "He who walks with integrity walks securely, but he who perverts his ways will become known." For me, I think that solidifies kind of where we are.
All right, so just to get back to what sources in the close to Senator Vogel are telling me, is that you did have an offer on the table that if she withdraw from the race, and that she would condemn the email and other things, that you would not go public with this, and you gave them a deadline of January 1. Is that true or not?
John, I can't really talk about that again, because I don't know those facts as to be true, so I'm not going to repeat hearsay per se. If the time comes where that named individual wants to be revealed and wants this to come out, then I think that those things will come out. So I just can't say, and I'd love to be able to say, but I can't, because I just can't do that.
No, I understand.
I'd love to be able to do it. I just can't do it.
I understand. All right, look, I appreciate the time in trying to flesh this out, and I hope you appreciate me trying to do my homework here to get to the facts so that we're not dealing with innuendo. So other sources are telling me that the Reeves campaign sent anonymous emails earlier over the summer, kind of doing the same thing, not attacking her personally, but talking about her voting for Judge Roush and things like that. Were you a party or a part of any of these negative anonymous emails attacking Senator Vogel?
Absolutely not. I've got documentation to prove it. And so, these are all distractions, John. Shiny mirrors to get away from the fact that on September 22nd, what proves to be the facts as they are and what a reasonable, prudent person would observe as the truth is the Vogels have slandered us. They set up a false email account using Alex Vogel's cell phone, verified by the IP addresses, and sent this stuff out. And the data, the evidence all points towards them. So the best way to not own up and admit this stuff is to start throwing shiny objects and counter accusations out there. I'm perfectly comfortable standing where we're standing because the evidence is absolutely overwhelming, and we're not going to chase shiny objects. We're going to stay focused on trying to find out the truth. My challenge will continue to be find out who did this. If not the Vogels, then who? But everything that we have and evidence-wise points to them. So I don't know what to tell you, John. We're just going to do what we've got to do. I'm not going to let this stand. We have an election in front of us. We've got to get 10,000 signatures. We've got to stay mission-focused on what matters to the people of the Commonwealth of Virginia. They're tired of these politics. I've gotten a ton of emails encouraging me to go forward and take care of this because maybe it'll show other people who want to go out and do these under-the-radar slanderous things can stop and getting this slime out of politics. And so we're going to do that. And listen, I owe it to my family and to my wife of 26 years and to my children that have read this, my 18-year-old, my 13-year-old. And you know what? This is what it is. I didn't start this fight, but I'm going to finish this fight.
All right, so it sounds like you're going to pursue this, Senator, the way I'm understanding what you're saying, Senator Reeves, by whatever means are available to you. Is that a fair assessment?
I think that's a fair statement to say that, are we open to resolving this without doing all this? Absolutely. But at this point, we're going to use legal remedies if necessary to resolve this issue. And we're going to continue to press the point to Jill Vogel and her husband, Alex Vogel, then if not you, then who, and show us evidence, not hyperboles and guesses, and it's the man with a missing arm. This isn't a TV series. This is real life, and it's affecting my family. And if you truly care about what this is doing, then you'll get something going. You'll give us your hard drives and your computers and your cell phone, and you won't try to destroy evidence, and you won't do this stuff, and we'll get it to a third party to allow them to do it, and stop throwing shiny objects around trying to distract people, but address the issue.
So the final thing, and just help me through this as look, again, I'm not a lawyer, I'm just a journalist, but I'm looking at this and I'm saying to myself, okay, Vogel, in my judgment, was the front runner in the race, right? She's an ethics lawyer, right? So, I mean, she understands this stuff. Her husband, Alex Vogel, I mean, this guy's a big-time Washington, D.C. big money lawyer. And, I'm thinking to myself, why would they get involved in these kind of basically amateurish shenanigans? I mean, what was the upside to them here? I mean, they were ahead. They have a financial advantage. I'm trying to figure out what the motivation would be to go through this in order to send an email to what it seems to be just a handful of people that were basically secured in the Reeves network.
Well, we don't know that because when Google closes the account, they close all the emails. So all the return emails and everything else were lost. So we don't know the extent of the damage. Now, we've received phone calls and such saying they received it, and so we don't know how big an outreach, other than when people give us feedback and they've contacted us back with that. That doesn't necessarily mean they're in our camp, but that certainly means that they're sick of this kind of politics. The other thing I would tell you is this, John. I can't speak for Jill Vogel. Only Jill Vogel can speak for Jill Vogel. And right now she's on the apology tour. What I would ask is that somebody get to her and say, Jill Vogel, why don't you answer the question that everybody wants to know? Did you do it? And if you didn't do it, what are you doing to prove that you didn't do it? Because the evidence is there. Why don't you get a third-party agreeable forensic person to come in? And the reason they're not going to do it, John, is quite simply because if they do that, then they'll be found out for sure. And that's the reality of this case. And it sickens me. It hurts me, John, that I have a colleague that would stoop to do this kind of thing to me and my family and the people that work in my office. When at all costs, I don't agree with that. I just don't, it's just not worth it to me. I'm not going to do that. And I certainly wouldn't do it to somebody that I thought at some point was a friend of mine. I've been in their home, and I know their children. And, what does that say? It reveals who they are, the character. And to me, it's a character issue.
Well, Senator,
we can run the rabbit trail, and everybody's going to do that. And more power to you, brother. Appreciate you bringing light to this thing. But the reality is the evidence is the evidence is the evidence. And it's irrefutable. And, the longer we chase the rabbit tail, it's going to lead to the same path, that these are the facts. This is what's going to happen. And, if not you, then who? We need to get back to that issue, because I'd like to seriously get this thing behind us. I'd like to focus on what matters first, what I'm calling mission first, which is getting back to the business of running this for office for June 13th primary, getting our signatures, getting our positive message for Virginia out, our vision of trying to reduce taxes and shut down welfare. Let's help those people and to continue to secure the Commonwealth, John. The last thing I want to do is having to sit here and defend my own character for a slanderous this kind of politics. I didn't go into this business to do that. I went into this business to set a vision for the people of the Commonwealth and represent people, but I'm not going to sit and take this lying down. And I think that's what got him.
Well, somebody...
Why would you go to war with a detective? Well, they did, and they screwed up, and they got caught. That's the reality.
Somebody sent the email, Senator, and somebody went to war with a former narcotics detective and a former Army Ranger. I certainly wouldn't have done that. But look, just for the record, the Vogels are vehemently denying any involvement in this whatsoever, just so that everybody knows that they are denying this vehemently. Final question. Have you had a conversation with Senator Vogel one-on-one?
The answer is no, and the reason I can't is because it's a legal matter, and that's where we are. And so it's an unfortunate thing, and it's just the facts of the case. And we're just going to stand with the truth, and the truth is supported by the facts, and pretty tough to do. Well,
Senator, our saying here on the John Fredericks Radio Network, the truth, my friend, will set you free. So we look forward to getting the bottom of it. Senator, I've taken a lot of your time up today. I know this is not a delightful thing to do, and I also understand that you've got legal restrictions, and I'm cognizant and appreciative and sensitive to that. Senator, thanks for being on with us. Do you have anything to add?
No, John, I just want to thank you, and to the listeners out there, appreciate the thoughts, the prayers. We could certainly use a lot of help with petitions. At BryceReeves.com is our website. We're on Facebook as well. We're on Twitter at ReevesVA. We need a lot of help. If you're sick and tired of these kind of politics, let us know. And please encourage the Vogels is to go out and help us find who it is, if it's not them. And let's get this thing rolling so we can get it behind us, so we can get to what Donald Trump always says, make America great. Well, let's make Virginia great. Let's make us exceptional. I'm ready to go. And I just appreciate your time and bringing the light to this issue, John.
All right, Senator, again, thank you for your time. Again, for the record, the Vogels have vehemently denied any involvement in this. So I think we all look forward to getting to the bottom of it. Again, somebody sent this email. It came from somewhere, didn't get manufactured. It came from someplace. And so we look forward to finding out who the originator of it was. And, one thing I think all of this stuff in politics, the emails, the scurrilous robocalls, we've all been through it. We've all seen it. It's a distraction and has no place. So, Senator, again,
Agreed.
thank you.
Totally.
Thank you for the time.